Have you ever felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to agree to something that you knew deep down would cost you your peace? We live in an era where the most valuable currency is no longer gold or data, but the subtle control over your internal decision-making process. Most of us walk through the world believing we are the sole architects of our choices, the captains of our own psychological ships. Yet, beneath the surface of our daily interactions, there is a silent, invisible war being waged for the territory of your will. This is not a war fought with weapons, but with words, emotional triggers, and the exploitation of your own virtues against you. Think of the last time you felt guilty for a boundary you tried to set, or the time you felt pressured into a purchase you didn't need. In those moments, you were not making a choice. You were responding to a stimulus designed by someone else to harvest your compliance. Manipulation is the art of making someone else's agenda feel like your own original thought. It is a subtle poison that enters through the cracks of our insecurities and the wounds of our past. To become impossible to manipulate, you must first accept a terrifying reality. You are currently far more vulnerable than you think. Your kindness is being mapped, your fears are being cataloged, and your need for belonging is being weaponized by those who see people as tools. But there is a way to build a fortress around your mind that no manipulator can breach. This journey is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming hyper-aware of the strings that move you. It is about reclaiming the sovereignty of your soul from the hands of the social engineers and the emotional predators. If you have ever felt like a pawn in someone else's game, today is the day you flip the board. We are going to dismantle the mechanics of the mind thief and replace them with the ironclad logic of the self-master. The greatest vulnerability we possess is not a lack of intelligence, but a desperate, unquenchable thirst for external validation. Every time you seek approval from the outside world, you are handing over a map of your psychological triggers to anyone who cares to look. The manipulator does not need to break into your mind. You leave the front door wide open every time you fear being disliked. Our modern social structure is built upon the exploitation of this fear, creating a society of people pleasers who are easily led. We have been conditioned from childhood to equate compliance with goodness and rebellion with moral failure. This conditioning creates a psychic soft spot that predators can press to elicit exactly the response they desire. Think of the economic reality of the world today. You are constantly told you are not enough unless you follow a specific path or buy a specific product. This manufactured inadequacy is the foundation of all manipulation, whether it's from a corporate entity or a toxic partner. They find the hole in your self-esteem and promise to fill it, but only if you dance to their specific tune. When you are dependent on the opinions of others for your sense of worth, you are essentially a leaf in the wind, moved by the slightest breeze of criticism. Manipulation relies on the fact that you would rather give up your autonomy than face the temporary discomfort of social friction. You avoid the no because you fear the silence that follows it, or the judgment that might be cast upon you. This root problem is an internal one. The world only manipulates what you have not yet learned to value within yourself. If you do not know your own worth, someone else will gladly assign a price to you, and it will always be lower than what you deserve. We have become a civilization of emotional beggars, holding out our hats for a drop of praise, and in doing so, we become slaves to the givers of that praise. The root of your susceptibility lies in the belief that you need something from the person who is trying to control you. Whether it is love, money, status, or simply the absence of conflict, these desires are the hooks that the manipulator sinks into your flesh. Until you can stand entirely alone and be content, you will always be at the mercy of those who offer companionship as a bribe. The hidden issue is that we have outsourced our identity to the collective.
The first major realization on the path to becoming untouchable is the absolute, devastating power of silence and the delayed response. Most manipulation tactics rely on momentum. They require you to react quickly, before your logical brain has a chance to catch up with your emotions. When a manipulator applies pressure, they are trying to create a vacuum of urgency that you feel compelled to fill with a yes. Statistics in behavioral psychology show that people are 70% more likely to agree to a request if they feel they must decide within 30 seconds. By simply introducing a gap between the stimulus and your response, you shatter the manipulator's most potent weapon. Silence is not a void. It is a wall of glass that the manipulator's efforts will shatter against if you remain still. When someone asks something of you or tries to guilt you, your first instinct will be to explain yourself or to defend your position. This is a trap. Explanation is the first step towards submission because it acknowledges that the other person has the right to judge your reasons. The person who is impossible to manipulate knows that no is a complete sentence that requires no further elaboration. Real-world studies on negotiation show that the person who speaks the least usually holds the most power in the room. By staying silent, you force the manipulator to reveal more of their hand. They will often keep talking to fill the awkwardness, eventually exposing their true motives. Think of the predator in the wild. They rely on the sudden movement of the prey to initiate the hunt. If the prey does not move, the predator's neurological wiring often short-circuits as the pattern of the chase has been broken. You must become that still point in the center of the storm. Practice the art of the 3-second pause before answering any question that carries emotional weight. During those 3 seconds, you are reclaiming your time and reminding yourself that your response is a gift, not an obligation. This strategy is counterintuitive because our social brain views silence as a threat to the relationship. But a relationship that is threatened by your silence is a relationship that was built on your compliance to begin with. You are not being rude, you are being precise. You are not being cold, you are being deliberate. To become truly impossible to manipulate, you must embrace a counterintuitive truth. Your greatest defense is the total acceptance of being the bad guy in the eyes of the manipulator. Manipulation often functions as a form of moral kidnapping. The manipulator holds your reputation or your self-image as a good person for ransom, demanding your compliance as the price of its return. They will say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this," or "A professional would never say no to this opportunity." These are not statements of fact. They are hooks designed to catch your ego. The strategy here is to stop defending your character to people who are using it as a weapon against you. If someone accuses you of being selfish because you won't let them exploit you, your response should be a calm, internal acceptance of that label. When you stop fearing the label of selfish or unkind, the manipulator loses their leverage entirely. You must realize that the manipulator's version of kindness is simply your willingness to be used. This is a challenge to everything we are taught about social harmony, but true harmony cannot exist without the ability to walk away. Most people spend their lives in a vulnerability trap, thinking that if they are honest and open with everyone, they will be protected by their sincerity. But the shark does not care how sincere the swimmer is. It only sees a target. You must learn to compartmentalize your vulnerability, reserving it only for those who have earned the right to see it through consistent, long-term integrity. For everyone else, you must maintain a functional persona, a polite but impenetrable mask that reveals nothing of your fears or desires. This is not being fake, it is being a guardian of your own inner sanctum. Consider the strategy of the gray rock, becoming as uninterested.
We reach now the climax of the problem, the moment where the philosophy meets the harsh reality of the consequences. If you ignore the lessons of psychological sovereignty, the cost is not just a few bad experiences. It is the slow, agonizing death of your authentic self. Every time you allow yourself to be manipulated, a small part of your will is pruned away, like a tree being forced to grow in a shape that suits someone else's garden. Over decades, you will wake up to find that your life is a collection of habits, relationships, and possessions that you never actually chose. You will be a stranger in your own skin, living a life that was ghost-written by the expectations of parents, partners, and the digital void. The severe consequence of being easy is that you eventually lose the capacity to even know what you want. Your internal compass becomes so skewed by the magnets of others' influence that it no longer points north. It only points towards safety and approval. This is the ultimate tragedy. To reach the end of your days and realize you were never the protagonist of your own story, but a background character in everyone else's. The manipulator does not just take your time or your money, they take your destiny. They steal the potential versions of you that could have existed if you had only had the courage to be impossible. But here is the final, most powerful realization. The moment you decide to be unmanipulatable, the entire world changes its relationship to you. People who used to drain you will suddenly find you difficult and disappear, making room for those who actually respect strength. You will find that your energy levels skyrocket because you are no longer leaking power through the holes of your insecurities. Becoming impossible to manipulate is the ultimate act of self-love, because it declares that your soul is not for sale, not for rent, and not for use. You become a beacon of clarity in a world of fog, and ironically, you become a source of true help to others because you give from choice, not from compulsion. To be untouchable is to be truly available for what matters. It is the death of the people-pleaser and the birth of the master. This path requires constant vigilance, for the world will never stop trying to find a new way in. But once you have tasted the air of psychological freedom,
to understand why someone attempts to manipulate you, we must first descend into the dark corridors of the human shadow. Every manipulator is, at their core, an individual fleeing from their own internal void. They do not see you as a sentient being with a soul, but rather as a resource to be harvested for their own emotional or material stability. Psychology teaches us that the drive to control others is almost always a compensation for a lack of control over oneself. When a person feels powerless within their own mind, they seek to exercise power over the minds of those around them. This behavior is often rooted in deep-seated insecurity and a fundamental fear of abandonment or insignificance. They use guilt, gaslighting, and praise, not because they are strong, but because they are terrified of your autonomy. Your independence is a mirror that reflects their own inadequacy. By pulling your strings, they feel a momentary sense of godhood in a life otherwise characterized by chaos. We must recognize that the predator is often just a wounded child wearing the mask of a master. They rely on your empathy, turning your greatest virtue into a weapon to be used against you. They study your reactions, looking for the cracks in your emotional foundation where they can insert their influence. But once you see the mechanism, the magic trick loses its power. You begin to realize that their anger is not a judgment of your character, but a symptom of their own pathology. Their silence is not a punishment, but a desperate attempt to regain the upper hand. Deep psychology reveals that the only reason they can affect you is because you have granted them the authority to do so. When you understand that their behavior is a projection of their internal landscape, you stop taking. The great elephant in the room that most experts refuse to discuss is our own secret addiction to being manipulated. Society trains us from birth to be agreeable, to seek validation, and to avoid conflict at all costs. We are taught that being nice is the ultimate virtue, but often, niceness is simply a lack of boundaries disguised as morality. This social conditioning creates a vacuum that manipulators are all too happy to fill. We often allow others to control us because, on some subconscious level,
It absolves us of the responsibility for our own lives. If we follow the path someone else has laid out, we have someone to blame when things go wrong. We trade our freedom for the comfort of being told what to do and who to be. This is the uncomfortable truth. Your desire to be liked is the greatest vulnerability you possess. A manipulator doesn't need to break your door down if you have already left it unlocked in hopes of receiving a compliment. The polite person is the easiest target because they are too afraid of being perceived as rude to say no. We must confront the fact that our need for external approval is a form of self-betrayal. When you value the opinion of a manipulator more than your own internal truth, you have already lost the battle. The world tells you to be empathetic and open, but it rarely tells you how to protect your spirit from those who would drain it. True strength is not about being liked by everyone. It is about being respected by the right people and being feared by those who wish to use you. We have been conditioned to see boundaries as walls that keep people out, rather than as fences that keep our peace in. Until you address your own craving for validation, you will always be a target. The most difficult part of becoming impossible to manipulate is admitting that you were once a willing participant in your own subjugation. It is the realization that your own ego was the hook the manipulator used to catch you. Once you stop feeding the ego's hunger for praise, the manipulator's bait becomes useless. This is the rare insight. The cage door is open, but most people are too afraid of the cold air to fly away.
To become a fortress of the mind, you must apply the strategy of strategic indifference starting today. In the face of an emotional outburst or a subtle guilt trip, your most powerful weapon is a lack of reaction. Manipulators thrive on your emotional response. It is the fuel that keeps their fire burning. When you offer them a blank stare instead of an argument, you starve their ego of the conflict it craves. Adopt the gray rock method. Become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a common pebble. If they try to provoke you, respond with short, non-committal phrases like, "I see," or "that is your opinion." Do not explain yourself, for an explanation is often seen as a sign of weakness and an invitation for further debate. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control the actions of others, but we have total mastery over our own judgment. Practice negative visualization. Imagine the person's worst tactics before you encounter them. By mentally rehearsing your calm response, you strip the manipulator of the element of surprise. Another practical tool is the 24-hour rule. Never commit to a request or respond to a high-pressure demand immediately. Say, "I will think about it and get back to you tomorrow." This simple phrase creates a physical and temporal boundary that the manipulator cannot easily cross. It allows the fog of emotional manipulation to clear, giving you the space to analyze the situation with cold, hard logic. Financial autonomy is also a key component of this strategy. If you are financially dependent on a manipulator, your ability to say no is fundamentally compromised. Build your own resources, no matter how small, so that leaving is always.
As you implement these changes, you will notice a profound shift in the fabric of your reality. The world will begin to feel quieter, less frantic, and more under your command. People who once felt like giants in your life will begin to shrink to their true human proportions. You will experience a sense of weightlessness, as if the heavy chains of other people's expectations have finally snapped. This transformation is not just psychological, it is visceral. You will find that your posture changes, your voice carries more weight, and your eyes no longer dart away from confrontation. Because you are no longer seeking permission to exist, you become a magnetic force. Manipulators will sense this new energy, and like predators encountering a creature they cannot kill, they will move on to easier prey. Your relationships will undergo a radical pruning process. Some people will leave your life in a fit of rage because they can no longer control you, and you must let them go with a smile. Those who remain will be those who respect your boundaries and value your true self over your utility. You will discover a new kind of solitude, one that is not lonely but replenishing.
In this state of autonomy, your creative and intellectual energies are no longer wasted on managing the moods of others. You can finally direct your focus toward your own growth, your own purpose, and your own mastery. The shift is from being a reactor to being a creator. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind, but the wind itself. You will realize that the version of you that was easy to manipulate was a fiction created by fear. The real you is unshakable, centered, and profoundly free. This is the ultimate reward for the hard work of setting boundaries. You have claimed the throne of your own life, and the view from there is magnificent.
To become impossible to manipulate is not an act of war, but an act of self-love. It is the final realization that your peace of mind is your most sacred possession, and it is not for sale. We have explored the psychology of the predator, the cracks in our own armor, and the strategies of the Stoic masters. But the blueprint is only as strong as your willingness to walk the path every single day. There will be moments when you slip, when the old need for approval resurfaces, and when you let someone across your border. Do not judge yourself harshly in these moments. Simply reset your boundaries and stand your ground once more. Remember that the greatest empires were not built in a day, but were fortified brick by brick over a lifetime. You are building a mental citadel that will protect you for the rest of your years. This philosophy is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming so grounded in your own truth that the lies of others cannot take root. As we conclude this journey, I ask you to look inward and identify one area where you are still giving away your power. Take it back today. If this message resonated with you, if you feel the stirrings of a new strength within, then join our community. Subscribe to this channel to continue your education in the art of self-mastery and the science of the human mind. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights might be the very thing someone else needs to hear to break their own chains. Remember, a mind that is aware of